Never judge a book by its cover is a statement that has been said so many times that it often comes across as cliche. But it's true, and Ranking of Kings is a prime example of that. What looks to be all cute and lovely on the surface is actually a series that is sentimental enough to make even a grown-ass man shed a few tears. It's the story of a sad, lonely boy who is shunned and ostracized by anyone and everyone around him, even though he is a prince, but he's deaf and mute. Maybe that's why the naysayers are so bold. They say whatever the heck they want simply because the prince cannot hear it. It's sad and oftentimes it is revolting. The first episode begins with a sweet little clip of a giant woman comforting her little child as he shed tears in her lap. He is almost the same size as her Pinky, but on a day a few years ago, he made a pinky promise with her that he'll become the greatest king in the world. His name is Bojji. Eventually his mother died because of unnatural causes, and he was left all alone. Just walking through days with a radiant smile on his face, paying no heed to what everyone is saying about him. He walks, runs, relishes the wind, and appreciates the flowers. A stranger would never know about the extraordinary social dilemmas this little man has to bear all day, every day. He is unable to say anything, so he bottles it all up. It's so simple yet profound enough to move you to tears before you even realize it. Though while he was staring at empty green fields outside the kingdom walls, he notices a rather unusual being carrying around a bag bigger than himself. His name is Kage, which essentially means shadow. Kage spots Bojji, and Bojji spots Kage. Kage sees it as a good opportunity to rob that shiny crown off the prince's head. He threatens the prince with a sword, but Bojji gets embarrassed and things get awkward. It doesn't take long for Kage to realize that he's actually deaf and mute. However, what's this? He can still actually read lips. Yes, you heard that right, my friends. All this time, this little man knew what everyone was saying about him. He knew because he could read their lips, and yet never for a moment will you see his glistening smile waver in front of others. Though for some reason, Kage is able to communicate with Bojji quite well. Too well, in fact. It seems like a normal conversation between a kid and another kid. Kage then asks him to give him all of his clothes and shoes since Bojji wasn't carrying any money. Plus, he also tells him to bring more expensive clothes tomorrow. Bojji obliges and delightedly agrees. He then walks back to the castle with nothing but his crown and shorts. This sort of exchange continues for a few days. Every day he wears expensive clothes and comes all the way beyond the wall to meet Kage, and then after their brief meeting, he goes back home. Whenever Bojji saw Kage, his face would immediately light up. Kage is like the only one who can actually talk to him, which is why this little exchange was Bojji's highlight of the day. The locals always had a field day when it came to bad-mouthing him, but Bojji took it all like a real champ. This does trigger Kage's curiosity though. Just what is up with the boy? Without getting into semantics, let's just say that he has begun to develop a soft spot for Bojji, and so he decides to follow him back to the castle. On the way there, Kage witnesses everything. How the locals laughed and mocked him. How they called him a useless prince. How the kids would run up to him and ask questions. But since he can't speak, they ridicule him even further. They didn't know that Bojji can read their lips, but Kage knew, and that's why he was surprised, even taken aback by Bojji's ability to smile through it all. But sometimes, enough is enough. When Bojji turns red because of embarrassment, he runs all the way back home. Once he reaches there, things don't change. The guards say the same things as the locals outside. Bojji is confronted by his stepmother about his obvious lack of clothes. When she speaks, her words are translated into sign language by a man named Domas. Another man suggests that the prince must have gotten mugged. When she hears it, she immediately orders them to kill the muggers. This catches Bojji off guard because he doesn't want Kage to die. He immediately starts talking about how he was just playing by himself and all. This was definitely not a behavior befitting a prince, so she continues to reprimand him. She even goes on to state that he doesn't have the qualities of a king. Her own son is better. Hearing this, Bojji looks sad and hurt, so she immediately tells Domas to stop with the sign language. Like everyone else, she also thought that Bojji can only understand sign language. She didn't know that he can read lips as well. Just like that, the queen and the others walk away except Domas. He tells Bojji that the king has called for him. He should get dressed and go meet him. Bojji nods and heads to his room. The boy breaks down into tears, but he makes sure to wipe it off and force back a smile before going to meet the king. Seeing all of this, Kage also feels sad for trying to use him. He vows to himself that he will become his friend. He tries to go after Bojji but gets caught by a man named Bebin. While Bojji arrives at the king's bedchamber, the door is big and it feels hard to open, but he manages. The king is in his bed, he greets his son. Domas is present as well. We are then told about how this kingdom was just a small town until the current king arrived, laid waste to the monsters who threatened it and built a kingdom. Although right now the king seems unwell. He asks Bojji about why he has been going out without clothes, but doesn't really care much about the answer. Instead, he gets straight to the point. The giant man holds his little son's hand and states that he adores him so much he can't bear it. But his hands are soft, while Daida's hands are strong, and so he wants him to become stronger. The king also asks Domas to train the prince as rigorously as needed. This frustrated Domas because he has been unable to improve Bojji, so he ends up taking his frustration out on the training equipment. Coincidentally, the second prince Daida is passing by. He asks Domas if Bojji has made any improvements. He'd like to go up against his brother in a duel. Domas replies that Bojji isn't ready, and so Daida instead asks to fight him. He isn't sure but rolls with it. Domas immediately notices that Daida's aura is similar to the king. He is delighted by the fine display of technique, but of course he was nowhere near Domas's level. Bojji is standing right there. He feels amazed by both of them and decides to challenge Daida himself. The word goes around pretty quickly, and soon enough, everyone gathers to see the duel. Kage was trying to help, but hearing about this duel gets him interested as well. Quite a few soldiers start discussing who would win, and of course Daida is the obvious pick. But a soldier named Hokuto is not so sure because there was that one time when he saw Prince Bojji take on a stupid number of snakes all by himself. The fight begins. Daida steps forward to land the first blow, but Bojji gracefully dodges it. And he dodges the next one, and the next one. Next, he dodges and lands a light hit on Daida's head, which genuinely impresses all the spectators, including Kage, who was hiding in the bushes. It's just a duel between two kids, but the execution up till this point in the episode, the build-up, the OSTs, and Bojji's character as a whole, it's beautiful enough to brim your heart with emotions. And that, my friend, is the crux of this anime. Ranking of Kings is the story of a young prince who is deemed useless and unworthy by everyone. He is mocked, ridiculed, ostracized, and yet, through effort alone, he pushes past his limits and becomes the greatest king in the world. Wit Studio has done a job well deserving of a perfect score when it comes to adapting this story. Trust me guys, you need to check it out if you haven't already. As for this video, what do you think? Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, feel free to also drop any other anime that you want me to cover. I'll go through your suggestions and even tag you when I get to the anime you suggested. A sincere like and subscribe can go a long way for your karma, just saying. Very well then, with that said, I'll see you guys in my next video.